Rain hammered the cracked pavement outside the convenience store as Jasmine's hands trembled, counting the same bills for the third time. 18, 19, $20. That was it. The last of everything until Friday's paycheck, and Friday was 4 days away. She looked at the wilted sandwich in the cooler. $6.99. Kira's lunch money for tomorrow. She put it back. A man stumbled past the window outside, expensive suit soaked through, and collapsed face first onto the sidewalk. Jasmine watched a woman in yoga pants step over him without breaking stride, phone pressed to her ear, laughing at something. A teenager crossed the street to avoid him entirely. An elderly man glanced down, shook his head, kept walking. The suited man didn't move. Rain pooled around his face. Jasmine grabbed the sandwich, paid the clerk with 7 of her $20, and walked outside into the storm with $13 left in her pocket. She knelt beside him, assessed him with practiced efficiency, bruises on his jaw, fresh and darkening, split knuckles on both hands. He'd hit someone, or something, hard. His suit was torn at the shoulder, expensive fabric shredded. The smell of gasoline and burnt rubber clung to him, acrid and sharp. She glanced at the street and saw tire marks, black streaks suggesting a car had peeled out fast. This wasn't a drunk who'd stumbled. This was a man who'd been in a fight, fled in a vehicle, and collapsed from a combination of exhaustion, pain, and whatever adrenaline crash followed. The question was, what had he been running from? Her scrubs immediately soaking through. His pulse was steady, but his skin was cold, lips tinged blue. She rolled him onto his side, recovery position, CNA training kicking in automatically. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused, seeing nothing. A taxi idled at the corner. $18 to her apartment. She had 13. She'd need to negotiate or walk part way, but she couldn't leave him on this Oakland sidewalk while the world stepped over him. She flagged the taxi. The cabbie helped her load him into the back seat. Jasmine held his head steady as they drove through Oakland's rain-slicked streets, past the closed storefronts and flickering streetlights of her neighborhood near Lake Merritt. His breathing was shallow but regular. Professional assessment. Mild hypothermia. Possible concussion. Definitely exhausted. Not dying. Not yet. The meter clicked up. $12. 15. 17. She asked the driver to stop a block from her building. She handed over all $13 and apologized. The cabbie looked at the unconscious man, at Jasmine's scrubs, at her face, and sighed. He helped her get the stranger out and didn't ask for the remaining $5. Getting him up 3 flights of stairs tested every muscle in her back. She was small, but strong. Years of lifting patients twice her size at Sunrise Care Home paying off now. His expensive suit smelled like rain and gasoline and something else. Burnt rubber, maybe. She keyed into her apartment as quietly as possible. Kira was asleep in the bedroom they shared, clutching Mr. Hops, her stuffed rabbit. 6 years old and still afraid of thunderstorms. Jasmine laid the stranger on her couch, grabbed her first aid kit from under the bathroom sink, and started working. His suit jacket was Ermenegildo Zenya. She only knew because Mrs. Kim at the care home had a son who wore the same brand and never shut up about it. She peeled it off carefully, checking for injuries. Bruised ribs, scraped knuckles, a split lip that had already stopped bleeding. A business card fell from his inner pocket. D. Park, Automotive Import Consulting. The website looked legitimate enough when she Googled it on her cracked phone screen, but something felt thin about it, like a photo printed on paper instead of actual depth. She set the card on her coffee table next to the overdue PG&E bill and the rent notice and the collection letter from Kira's dentist. She cleaned his wounds with the last of her alcohol wipes, applied butterfly bandages to the split lip, wrapped his knuckles in gauze. His face was surprisingly peaceful in sleep, younger than she'd first thought. Maybe 30. Korean features, sharp jawline, dark hair falling across his forehead. She sat back on her heels and looked at him, at her apartment, at the choices she'd made in the last hour. A stranger in her home. $0 in her pocket. Kira, sleeping 15 feet away. This was either the kindest thing or the stupidest thing she'd ever done, and she wouldn't know which until morning. Thunder cracked outside. Kira whimpered in her sleep. Jasmine checked on her, smoothed her hair, whispered that everything was okay, even though she had no idea if that was true. When she came back to the living room, the stranger was staring at the ceiling, eyes open but glazed with confusion. She knelt beside the couch, kept her voice soft and steady. He tried to sit up and she pressed a hand to his shoulder, gentle but firm, telling him to stay down, that he was safe, that he'd been outside in the rain and she'd brought him home. His eyes focused on her face and something shifted in them. Surprise, maybe, or recognition of kindness he hadn't expected. He asked where he was and she told him Oakland, her apartment, that he was going to be fine. He closed his eyes again, and the tension drained from his shoulders. Within seconds, his breathing deepened into sleep. Jasmine sat in the dark, listening to rain and thunder and two people breathing, and wondered what the hell happened next. Morning light filtered through her thin curtains, gray and weak. Jasmine woke on the floor beside the couch, her back screaming from the hard surface, her first thought immediately of Kira. She checked the bedroom. Empty. Panic spiked until she heard voices in the kitchen, soft and careful. She walked in to find Kira sitting at their tiny table, her drawing notebook open in front of her while Mr. Hop sat propped against the sugar bowl. The stranger was now awake and sitting upright on the couch, looking equally uncertain about the situation. He had kind eyes, Jasmine noticed, tired and wary, but kind. Kira held up her drawing notebook. She'd sketched him while he slept, capturing the bruise on his jaw with impressive detail for a 6-year-old, though the proportions were still childlike, his head slightly too large for his body, and his hands simplified into mittened shapes. The stranger looked at the drawing and something crossed his face, soft and unexpected. He told Kira she was talented and she beamed, gap-toothed and proud. Then Kira said something that made Jasmine's chest tighten. "You look sad, even when you smile." The stranger went very still. He looked at this small child, who saw things adults missed, and nodded slowly, admitting it like a confession. "Yeah, kiddo, I guess I am." Jasmine made breakfast, with what she had. Eggs for Kira, scrambled with cheese. Eggs for the stranger, plain. Toast for herself, no butter. She set the plates down in that order and didn't think about the symbolism until she caught him watching her, something clicking behind his eyes. He said his name was Daniel and offered his hand formally, seriously, like they were conducting business instead of sitting in her cramped kitchen, eating mismatched plates of eggs. She shook it. His grip was firm but careful, like he was aware of his own strength and consciously gentling it. He asked why she helped him, and Jasmine told the truth. Because you needed help. He absorbed this, turning it over like a puzzle piece that didn't fit his understanding of the world. He noticed everything. The stack of bills on the counter, their amounts visible, the emptiness of her refrigerator when she'd opened it. Kira's shoes by the door, worn through at the toes. He pulled out his wallet, counted out money for the cab fare, and she refused it. He insisted, and she refused harder, telling him that kindness didn't come with a price tag, and she didn't want his money. The word want stuck in the air between them, both of them aware she'd avoided saying need. He left his business card on the table, asked her to call if she needed anything, and she said she wouldn't, but thank you. After he left, Kira asked if they'd see him again, and Jasmine said probably not. Kira looked disappointed. So did Jasmine, if she was honest with herself, which she tried not to be about things like this. Things like hope. Things like connection. Things like the way his eyes had softened when Kira showed him her drawing, or the way he'd looked at her after she'd refused his money, like she'd done something incomprehensible and valuable. If you think Jasmine was wrong to help a stranger when she could barely feed her own daughter, drop a comment right now. Tell me what you would have done with that $20. Would you have Stepped over him like everyone else? Or would you have stopped? Because what happens next is going to make you question everything you think you know about doing the right thing. And I need to know where you stand before we go any further. Hit that subscribe button if you're ready to see how one choice can destroy everything or save it. Your call. That evening, an envelope slid under her door. Jasmine stared at it for a full minute before picking it up. Inside was $500 in cash and a note in neat handwriting. For the taxi, the breakfast, the sick day, and the kindness. Thank you. The letter D was all the signature it needed. Jasmine sat on her couch and cried, which she hadn't done in 3 years, not since Kira's father had left, and she'd realized tears were a luxury she couldn't afford. But this broke something in her. The idea that someone had seen her sacrifice and valued it, had paid attention to details she thought were invisible. The sick day. He'd noticed her. Sunrise care home badge. He'd calculated that she'd used a sick day to stay home with him that morning instead of going to work. He'd seen her. She tried to give it back the next day. His business card listed an address in Jack London Square, a modest office in a building that housed import-export companies and shipping consultants. She found him there, behind a desk that looked barely used, clearly surprised to see her. She held out the envelope and told him she couldn't take it, that it was too much. He stood up, came around the desk, and his presence filled the small office in a way that should have been threatening, but somehow wasn't. He told her it wasn't enough, that it was what he could do right now, and the emphasis on right now suggested limitations she didn't understand. She asked why he cared, and he said, "Because you helped me when you had every reason not to." That's rare. The silence stretched between them, charged with something neither of them seemed ready to name. He offered to buy her lunch so they'd be even. She hesitated, thinking of Kira at school, of the afternoon shift she'd picked up, of all the reasons this was complicated. Then she said, "Okay, just lunch, then we're even." They went to a Thai place nearby, small and family-run, the kind where the owner knew the regulars by name. They sat in a corner booth and talked carefully around the big things, sticking to safe topics. She told him about her work, the Korean elders she cared for at Sunrise, how she'd picked up basic phrases in Korean just from repetition and immersion. She mentioned she called her mother in Atlanta every Sunday, brief check-ins that reminded her she wasn't completely alone even when she felt like it. He seemed pleased that she worked with Korean elders, like it mattered that she existed in proximity to his culture. He told her about his father, who died when Daniel was 16, and the hole that had left. She told him about Kira's father, who'd left when Kira was 2, and the different kind of hole that created. They bonded over absence and loss and the weight of surviving. He asked if he could see her again, and something in his voice made it clear this wasn't a casual question. She said, maybe, which they both knew meant yes. When they parted, he touched her shoulder briefly, a gesture that carried more weight than it should have. She watched him walk back to his office and felt something shift in her chest, something dangerous and warm and entirely inadvisable. She told herself it was just gratitude, just the kindness of being seen. She told herself a lot of things that weren't quite true. Over the next 3 weeks, maybe became part of her routine. Coffee at Red Bay, the Black-owned cafe near the lake where the owner, Devin, made perfect pour-overs and minded his business. Daniel brought a sketchbook for Kira one day, expensive paper and real charcoal pencils, and Kira loved him instantly in the way children do when adults take them seriously. He taught her to say thank you in Korean, and she practiced it constantly, the syllables clumsy but earnest in her mouth. Jasmine watched them together and felt her walls cracking, the ones she'd built after Kira's father left, after years of being invisible and alone and barely surviving. Daniel was careful with her. Too careful, maybe. He never pushed, never assumed, always asked permission before crossing thresholds. Can I drive you home? Can I buy groceries? Can I see you tomorrow? She started saying yes more easily, stopped questioning his motives, let herself believe this might be real. But there were signs she ignored because she wanted to ignore them. The vagueness about his work, the expensive watch that didn't match his modest office, the way his phone would buzz at odd hours and his face would close off, becoming unreadable, the bruises on his knuckles that appeared and disappeared with suspicious frequency. 3 weeks in, she cooked dinner at her apartment, soul food, the recipes her grandmother had taught her before she died, back when Jasmine was still young enough to believe in the power of organizing and community and fighting systems that ground people down. Fried chicken, collard greens, mac and cheese, cornbread. He brought banchan from a Korean restaurant, small dishes of kimchi and pickled vegetables, and they laid it all out together, a fusion that felt symbolic. Kira sat between them, chattering about school, about her drawings, about the rabbit she wanted but they couldn't afford. Daniel listened to her with complete attention, asking questions, treating her opinions like they mattered. After Kira went to bed, they sat on the couch, closer than they'd been before, and talked in low voices about everything and nothing. He almost kissed her. She felt it in the way he leaned in, the way his eyes dropped to her mouth, the way the air changed between them. But she pulled back, gentle but firm, and told him she needed to take this slow. For Kira, he understood immediately. No wounded pride, just acceptance. He told her he wasn't going anywhere, and she believed him. That was her first mistake. The 3rd week, she went shopping at Koryo Mart in Temescal, trying to buy ingredients for myeokguk, seaweed soup for one of the elders' birthdays at sunrise. She stood in the aisle, overwhelmed by options she didn't understand, and texted Daniel for help. He showed up 20 minutes later, grinning, and guided her through the store like a tour of his heritage. This seaweed, not that one. This dashida for the broth. You'll need sesame oil, the good kind. He was relaxed here in a way she'd never seen, comfortable in his own culture, and she fell a little bit harder watching him be fully himself. At checkout, he paid before she could stop him. She protested less than she would have a week ago. This was becoming their rhythm, this dance of give and take, and she was learning to accept help the way she'd always given it. Outside, loading groceries into his car, a Genesis GV80 luxury SUV that probably cost more than she made in 2 years, he took her hand, just held it, standing in the parking lot, and she let him. Kira asked her that night if Daniel was going to be her dad, and Jasmine didn't know how to answer. It's complicated, baby. But Kira was 6 and didn't understand complicated. She only understood that he made Jasmine smile, and that was enough for her. The cracks started showing 4 days later. Daniel arrived at her apartment after dark, moving stiffly, and when she turned on the light, she saw it. Bruised knuckles, worse than before. Split lip, fresh. A wince when he breathed that suggested bruised ribs. She didn't ask what happened. She just got her first aid kit, sat him down, and started cleaning wounds like she had that first night. This time felt different. This time, they both knew what this meant. "Does anyone take care of you?" she asked, and the question hung in, the air like smoke. He didn't answer for a long time. When he did, his voice was rough. Not for a long time. She pressed gauze to his knuckles, gentle and competent, and told him someone should. His eyes found hers, and the intensity there made her breath catch. The almost kiss from before lived in the space between them, waiting. This time, she didn't pull away. This time, she leaned in. Kira called from the bedroom, asking for water, and the spell broke. Daniel smiled, soft and understanding, and said he should go. At the door, he turned back and told her he was trying to leave a life he didn't want anymore, and she heard the things he wasn't saying underneath those words. The danger, the complication, the warning. She should have asked more questions. She should have pushed. Instead, she kissed his cheek and told him to be careful, and he promised he would try. 2 days later, the check arrived. $2,000. A cashier's check, official and impossible to refuse. with a note that made her hands shake. You gave me $20, 100% of what you had that night. This is 100 times that amount. Not because you need repayment, but because you deserve to know that your kindness multiplied. Your rent, $1,450. Utilities, $180. Groceries, $370. Total, $2,000. This month is covered. You can breathe, Jasmine called him, crying too hard to speak at first. He waited patiently until she could form words. How did you know the exact amounts? I saw your bills, he said simply. I pay attention. She told him it was too much and he said no. It's proportional. You gave everything, and I'm giving what I can. She asked why, and his answer was immediate. Because someone should take care of you too. She accepted the money, paid rent for the first time in months without the sick anxiety of wondering if the check would clear. Bought Kira new shoes, proper ones that fit instead of hand-me-downs, from the church donation box. Stocked the refrigerator with actual food instead of the cheapest calories she could find. That night, she stood in her apartment and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Relief, space to breathe, the absence of constant low-level panic about survival. Her coworker Maya noticed immediately. New shoes for Kira, full fridge, the lightness in Jasmine's shoulders. Maya pulled her aside during their break and asked the questions Jasmine had been avoiding asking herself. Where'd this money come from? You barely know this guy. What if he's into something? Jasmine defended him instinctively, but Maya planted the seed of doubt. Just be careful, check him out, make sure he's who he says he is. That night, after Kira was asleep, Jasmine went deeper than surface-level Google searches on the old laptop she'd gotten from the library's donation program 3 years ago, the battery barely holding a charge anymore. She found a news article from 3 years ago, buried on the second page of results. Federal investigation into luxury vehicle smuggling ring. No arrests made, but the location matched Daniel's business address. The description of the operation, importing Genesis luxury sedans and modified performance Hyundais, and rare limited edition models that weren't available through official channels, matched what little he'd told her about his work. Her stomach dropped. She sat with her laptop open, staring at words like illegal importation and customs fraud and organized crime, and tried to reconcile them with the man who'd brought her daughter a sketchbook, who'd held her hand in a parking lot, who'd noticed she worked at a Korean care home and thought that mattered. She called him at midnight, her voice steadier than she felt. We need to talk. Now, he said he'd be there in 20 minutes. She waited by the window, watching his Genesis pull up, watching him take the stairs 2 at a time. When she opened the door, he knew immediately. His face shifted from concern to resignation, like he'd been waiting for this moment since the beginning. Show me, she said, holding up her phone with the article. Is this you? He looked at it and didn't lie. Let's go somewhere private. They drove to Joaquin Miller Park in the Oakland Hills, the overlook where you could see the whole city spread out below, lights glittering like fallen stars. He parked and they sat in silence until he started talking. Yes. It's me. I import luxury cars from Korea. Some of them bypass normal customs channels. High-end vehicles, Genesis luxury sedans, modified performance Hyundais, rare limited edition models that aren't officially available here yet. I sell them to wealthy clients who don't want to wait for official imports and don't ask questions about paperwork. The operation runs about $4.5 million annually. It started small, a favor for a friend, and grew bigger than I intended. I've been trying to go legitimate, but my partner isn't interested in legitimate. Who's your partner? Jasmine asked, and Daniel's jaw tightened. His name is Mr. Chen. He took me in when my father died. Gave me work, purpose, a future. I owe him. What kind of work? She pressed, and Daniel stared out at the city lights. The kind that keeps you fed, but costs your soul. They sat with that truth between them. Jasmine processed what this meant. The money he'd given her wasn't clean. The life he was offering wasn't simple. The danger she'd sensed but ignored was real and specific. She asked the question that mattered most. Does this touch Kira? Does this touch me? Daniel's answer was immediate and intense. No, never. You're separate from all of this. But even as he said it, they both knew it wasn't true. Nothing was separate once you cared about someone. Everything touched everything else. Over the next week, Jasmine watched more carefully. The black sedan that parked outside her building 3 times. The man in the suit, who seemed to be at Lake Merritt every time they were. Daniel's phone buzzing constantly, his face closing off when he checked it. She didn't confront him yet. She was gathering information, thinking strategically, planning. Her grandmother's voice in her head, lessons from a Black Panther organizer who'd survived by being smarter than her enemies. Don't fight power with power. Fight power with strategy. Kira noticed things too, the way children do. She drew the black sedan in her notebook, detailed and recognizable, even with a child's simplified style. When Jasmine asked why she kept drawing the same car, Kira said, because it's always there, watching. The observation was matter of fact. No fear, just a child noting patterns the way she might note the weather. Jasmine's blood went cold. She called Daniel immediately and told him they needed to talk. Tonight. Now. He came to her apartment and she showed him Kira's drawings, 5 sketches of the same black sedan from different angles. His face went pale. That's not mine, he said quietly. That's someone else watching. The next morning, 2 men in expensive suits knocked on Jasmine's door. Professional, polite, terrifying in their courtesy. They introduced themselves as colleagues of Daniel Park and said they wanted to make sure his personal relationships remained healthy. They knew everything. Kira's school, Laurel Elementary, Jasmine's schedule, morning shift at Sunrise Care, home by 3, her mother in Atlanta, the address on Peachtree Street, her mother's phone number, her car, a 2009 Honda Civic, license plate number. They delivered their message with smiles that never reached their eyes. Mr. Park is entering a new phase of his career. His personal relationships are important to us. We want to make sure those relationships stay healthy. One of them walked to her refrigerator, opened it casually like he owned the place, looked at the food Daniel's money had bought. Nice to see you're eating well. He spotted Kira's drawings on the fridge, pulled off the one of their sedan. She's very observant. Good quality in a child. They left their business card, told her to call if she needed anything, and walked out. Jasmine locked the door behind them, slid down against it, and shook. She called the school, told them no one except her could pick up Kira. No exceptions. Then she called Daniel and her voice came out raw and furious. Who the fuck are you really? He arrived in 15 minutes, different than she'd ever seen him. Not the careful gentleman who bought her coffee, or the vulnerable man who'd admitted to loneliness. This Daniel moved with controlled violence, checking her windows, her locks, his whole body on alert. He told her to sit down and she refused, too angry for sitting. Tell me everything, she demanded, right now, or get out and never come back. So he told her, all of it. His father's death in a car accident when Daniel was 16, left alone in a country that still felt foreign despite years here. Mr. Chen finding him, offering shelter and work and belonging when he had nothing. Starting small, translating, driving, errands that seemed innocent. Graduating to smuggling, first cars, then other goods. The warehouse fire in Richmond in 2019, the security guard who died, the footage Chen had of Daniel's face, Daniel's lighter, the guard trapped inside while the building burned. The guard's name was Marcus Chen, no relation to his boss. His widow was Patricia Chen. She had 3 daughters. Daniel knew this because Chen made sure he remembered. Made sure the weight of that death sat on Daniel's shoulders every single day. The way Chen had protected him, buried the evidence, and used it as a chain around Daniel's neck ever since. Chen wants me to expand operations. Pharmaceuticals, unmarked, high margin, West Coast distribution. I said no. He gave me 30 days to change my mind, or he sends the footage to the FBI and to Patricia Chen. He thinks the coincidence of the last name is poetic. He uses it to remind me what loyalty costs. Jasmine absorbed this. Every word a hammer blow. You killed someone. Daniel didn't flinch from it. Yes. Not on purpose. The fire was meant to cover a shipment discrepancy. I didn't know anyone was inside. But that doesn't change what happened. A man died because of my choices. Marcus Chen. He was 42. He had 3 daughters. I know this because Chen makes sure I remember. Why didn't you tell me before? Jasmine asked, and Daniel's composure cracked. Would you have let me near Kira if you knew? She didn't answer because they both knew the truth. You need to leave, she said finally. You need to walk away from me and Kira and never look back. Daniel stood, accepting this, devastated but understanding. At the door, he turned. I'll make sure Chen leaves you alone. I'll give him what he wants. You'll be safe. And you? She asked. I'll be what I've always been. Trapped. After he left, Jasmine sat in the dark with Kira, asleep in the next room, and faced the truth. She'd brought danger into their lives by helping a stranger. She'd endangered her daughter by falling for a criminal. She'd been stupid and reckless and naive. Every logical thought told her to cut ties, disappear, protect Kira at all costs. But underneath the logic ran something stronger. Daniel hadn't chosen this life freely. He'd been a kid alone and desperate, and someone had exploited that. He was trying to leave but couldn't, because leaving meant destroying himself or the people he cared about. And she knew something about being trapped by circumstances beyond your control, about surviving systems designed to grind you down, about the impossibility of pulling yourself up when the whole structure was built to keep you under. Her grandmother's voice again, clearer this time. The Panthers didn't run when things got hard. We organized. We strategized. We fought smart. Jasmine made a decision that went against every survival instinct she'd honed over 32 years of life. She called Daniel at 11 p.m., and when he answered, defeated and resigned, she said 4 words that changed everything. Come back. We're not done. What are you talking about? He asked, and Jasmine felt the steel in her spine, the inheritance of women who'd organized breakfast programs and fought police and survived. You said you're trapped, so we find the exit together, but you do exactly what I say. Daniel, I can't ask you to, and she cut him off. I'm not asking, I'm telling. Get back here, now. Daniel confessed to killing a man, and now Jasmine's choosing to help him anyway. Some of you are going to say she's crazy, that she should run, that she's putting her daughter at risk. Others are going to understand that sometimes the right choice isn't the safe choice. Drop a comment and tell me which side you're on. Would you help someone escape their past, even if it meant risking your future? Hit subscribe because you need to see how this impossible situation resolves. I promise you, it's not what you expect. He was there in 20 minutes. They sat at her kitchen table with coffee and notebooks and the grim determination of people who'd run out of other options. Jasmine asked questions, and Daniel answered, laying out the structure of Chen's organization like a map of enemy territory. She listened, processed, planned. Her mind worked through the problem like a strategy session, like the community organizing her grandmother had taught her. You don't fight power directly. You make yourself more valuable than the cost of keeping you down. Chen wants you to run pharmaceuticals, she said. Why? Higher margins, less bulk than cars, easier to move across borders. And if you do it, you're in forever. Yes. So we give him something better, something that keeps you valuable, but gives you leverage. Daniel started to argue and she raised a hand, silencing him. Listen. You're thinking like someone trapped. Think like someone negotiating. What does Chen actually want? Profit? Daniel said. Legacy, Jasmine countered. He's what? 60. He's thinking about what lasts after he's gone. You give him legitimacy wrapped in profit. She laid out her plan. Daniel would propose a restructuring. Instead of hands-on distribution, he'd set up a legitimate logistics consulting company. Park Logistics. Licensed, insured, clean books. It would handle Chen's legal imports, cars and electronics and consumer goods, providing cover for discrete shipments hidden in legitimate containers. Lower risk, because if caught, the legal business provided plausible deniability. Higher scalability, because legitimate infrastructure could expand nationally, internationally. And legacy, the thing old men with empires craved. Chen's organization would outlast him, protected by legitimate business structures. Daniel listened, something like hope flickering in his eyes for the first time in years. He'll never go for it. He will if you make it. About him, not you. You're not asking for freedom. You're offering him immortality. And, she added, leaning forward with the intensity that made her good at her job, good at survival, we get leverage of our own. The footage. Chen's not the only one who knows about the warehouse. Who else was there? Daniel thought. Chen's lieutenant, James Lee. He helped me cover it up. Is James loyal to Chen or to himself? To himself, Daniel admitted. Then we make James an offer he can't refuse. The plan was dangerous, maybe impossible. They'd need to flip James by offering him a CFO position at Park Logistics, equity stake, clean exit from Chen's organization over 2 years. In exchange, James would lose the warehouse footage. Chen couldn't use leverage that didn't exist. The risk was astronomical. If Chen discovered the betrayal, they were all dead. But the alternative was Daniel running pharmaceuticals, sinking deeper into a life he couldn't escape. And eventually that life would touch Jasmine and Kira anyway. Better to fight now with strategy than later with desperation. Kira woke up, patted out for water, saw them at the table surrounded by papers. Are you in trouble? She asked with a child's directness. We're figuring it out, baby, Jasmine said. Is Daniel staying? Kira pressed, and the question held weight beyond the immediate moment. Daniel looked at Jasmine, and Jasmine looked at her daughter and made a choice that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. Yeah, kiddo, he's staying. Over the next week, they moved fast. Daniel met with James at the Oakland waterfront at 2 a.m., proposed the deal, watched James calculate risk versus reward. James wanted 15% equity instead of 10. Done, Daniel agreed. They shook hands in the shadow of shipping cranes, 2 men betting their lives on a gamble. James had the footage within 72 hours. A thumb drive he handed over with shaking hands. Daniel destroyed it immediately, smashing it with a rock and scattering the pieces in the bay. The leverage was gone. Now they just had to convince Chen the new plan was better than the old one. Chen's 30-day ultimatum had started the day after the men came to Jasmine's apartment. That meant they were already 7 days in when Daniel walked into Chen's office with a business plan. Professional, detailed, showing 6-month and 5-year projections. Chen listened with the stillness of a predator, giving nothing away. When Daniel finished, Chen asked about Jasmine Brooks. Daniel kept his face neutral. She's separate from business. Chen smiled, cold and knowing. Nothing is separate. Everyone is leverage. But I admire efficiency. You have intelligence I didn't credit. This plan has merit. Chen's counteroffer was harsh. 70-30 split in Chen's favor instead of the 60-40 Daniel proposed. The 30-day deadline remained to launch basic infrastructure, and Jasmine and Kira stayed under protection, which was Chen's word for surveillance. They weren't assets, but they weren't free. Daniel negotiated the only thing that mattered. They're off limits for anything beyond passive protection. Not leverage, not pressure, not threats. That's the line. Chen considered this, weighing the value of loyalty against the cost of restrictions. Fine, he agreed. They're off limits. Unless you give me a reason. You won't have one, Daniel promised, and meant it. 5 days later, on day 12 of the 30-day deadline, the school called. Someone had been asking questions about Kira's schedule, what time she was picked up, who was authorized for pickup. Jasmine's heart stopped. She called Daniel and he mobilized immediately, security picking up Kira and bringing her to Jasmine at work. In the car, Kira did what she did best. She drew the man who'd been asking questions. Her drawing had the simplified proportions of a child's art. The head too large and the features basic, but she'd captured specific details with surprising accuracy. The shape of his glasses, the scar on his chin, the pattern on his tie. When Daniel saw the sketch, his expression went dark. That's not one of Chen's people. That's Park Jin-woo, rival organization. The situation had just become exponentially more complicated. It wasn't just Chen they needed to worry about. Daniel's attempt to restructure had drawn attention from competitors who saw vulnerability and opportunity. They'd have to accelerate the timeline, launch Park Logistics in 15 days instead of the 18 remaining. Jasmine asked if he could do that, and Daniel said he had to. There was no other option. The next 2 weeks were brutal. Daniel worked 20-hour days setting up infrastructure, filing paperwork, securing licenses, making connections. Jasmine kept working at Sunrise Care, but now a car picked her up. Professional security that was protection and prison simultaneously. Kira adapted the way children do, accepting the new normal without fully understanding it. She drew the security guards, the black sedans, the men in suits, filling her notebook with the reality of their lives now, each drawing a mix of childlike simplification and unnervingly accurate details. On day 15 of the 30-day deadline, Park Logistics opened officially. Small office in Jack London Square, legitimate contracts with Korean electronics companies, clean books that James managed with meticulous attention. The first legal shipment arrived and cleared customs without issue. Daniel called Chen with the update and Chen sounded pleased. Good. You have potential I didn't see. Perhaps I underestimated you. The words were praise and threat in one, a reminder that Chen's approval was as dangerous as his anger. That weekend, Daniel took Jasmine and Kira to Lake Merritt. They watched the drummers at the Sunday drum circle, Kira dancing unselfconsciously while Jasmine and Daniel sat on the grass. The black sedan was parked 50 feet away, watching. They both saw it and both ignored it. This was their life now. Freedom within constraints. Hope within surveillance. Kira ran back to them, breathless and happy, and threw herself at Daniel. He caught her easily, this child who'd decided he was hers, and something in his face softened into an emotion he probably didn't have words for. That night, after Kira was asleep, Jasmine and Daniel sat on her couch in the dark. Are we safe? She asked, and Daniel answered honestly. Safer. Not safe. Not yet. How long do we have to live like this? I don't know, maybe a year, maybe longer. But the business is working. Chen is pleased, and every day we're building legitimacy, we're building our way out, and the rival, Park Jin-woo, being handled. Chen doesn't like competition. Jasmine absorbed this, the reality of a future measured in surveillance and careful steps. This isn't what I imagined when I stopped for you that night. Do you regret it? Daniel asked, and she thought about the question. Honestly, no, I regret that it's hard. But I don't regret you. Daniel took her hand, this gesture they'd shared in a parking lot that felt like years ago instead of weeks. This is Jeong, he said, using the Korean word for the first time. What does that mean? Jasmine asked, and Daniel searched for the English translation that could never quite capture it. It means staying when it's hardest. It means choosing someone even when it costs you. It means you're not alone. Jasmine tested the word in her mouth, the sound unfamiliar but the meaning resonant. My grandmother had a phrase, ride or die. Sounds different but means the same thing. Yeah, Daniel agreed. Then yeah, Jasmine said, this is Jeong. They kissed, finally, after weeks of almosts and interruptions. It wasn't passionate or desperate. It was tired and real. two people holding each other against the weight of what they'd chosen. Kira appeared in the doorway, sleepy and observant. "You're holding hands," she said matter-of-factly. "Yeah, baby," Jasmine confirmed. "That okay with you?" Kira considered this seriously. "He makes you happy." "He does," Jasmine admitted. "Then it's okay," Kira decided and climbed onto the couch between them. They sat there, the three of them, a family built from $20 and desperation and the choice to be seen. Outside, the black sedan kept its vigil. Inside, they built something fragile and precious. Jasmine thought about the morning she'd counted her last $20, about the man collapsed in the rain, about the four people who'd walked past him, and the choice she'd made to stop. That choice had brought danger and complication and fear, but it had also brought this: connection, partnership, the feeling of not being invisible anymore. The sun rose over Oakland, light breaking through the morning fog, touching the lake where drummers would gather later, where Kira would dance and they would watch, where their life would continue in this new shape they'd made. It wasn't freedom, not yet. But it was hope, and after years of having none, hope felt revolutionary. Jasmine looked at Daniel, at Kira between them, at the light filling her small apartment. She'd gambled her last $20 on a stranger, and the return on that investment wasn't measurable in money. It was measured in moments like this, in hands held, in choices made, in staying when it would have been easier to walk away. If you made it this far, you've witnessed something most people will never understand. The cost of kindness, the price of being seen, the weight of choosing love in a world built on transaction. Drop a comment and tell me what Jeong means to you. Have you ever stayed when leaving would have been easier? Have you ever been seen by someone when the whole world looked away? Hit subscribe because this story isn't over. Daniel and Jasmine's fight for freedom is just beginning, and you're going to want to see how it ends. Trust me on that. This is what it means to stop when everyone else walks past. This is what it means to give everything when you have nothing. This is what it means to build family from fragments and hope from desperation. $20. One stranger, two lives changed, and a little girl who draws the truth of the world around her, capturing what adults try to ignore. The black sedans, the watching eyes, but also the held hands, the shared meals, the choosing to stay. That's the story Kira will tell someday. Not about the danger, about the staying, about Jeong, about $20 that multiplied into everything.